Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down how Bilbao pulled off what could be the shock of the weekend by defeating Barcelona in their first game of the La Liga season. But before we do that, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below, it does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But now, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at Bilbao, 4-2-3-1, and Inaki Williams ahead of DeMarcos, Raul Garcia, and Munain, with Unai Lopez and Danny Garcia in midfield. Then we move to Barcelona. No Messi, no Rakitic, no Busquets. No, they did something a bit different here, 4-3-3. They have Suarez, Griezmann, and Dembele up front. In midfield, and with De Jong, Elena, and Sergio Roberto. So now let's get to the video, see why Barcelona struggled against Bilbao and how Bilbao were able to pull it off. So when we break down Barcelona's loss to Athletic Bilbao, the questions that need to be asked is how did it happen? We look at Barcelona 4-3-3, trying to break down a Bilbao side that did drop off into a 4-5-1 without the ball, and it was very distinct on what their plan was. Stop Barcelona from overloading the wide areas and dominating those positions and prevent De Jong from getting on the ball. So what ended up happening was that they did have Raul Garcia, who is renowned for his work rate and his tactical discipline, to sit on De Jong and ensure that he was unable to drop off into these positions here or split the center backs to get on the ball. And that was very key to ensuring that Barcelona didn't dictate the tempo of the game from deeper positions and he was unable to get into his passing rhythm. There were some times where he did help Inaki Williams press from the front, and when that happened, we'd see Unai Lopez drop off or step forward and press De Jong to ensure that he was unable to get on the ball. They weren't really worried about Eliana or Sergio Roberto in those regards, but they wanted to ensure that De Jong was unable to pick up the ball in those positions. We move on into the wider areas, same thing here. Down both flanks, they were very good for large portions of it. What we ended up seeing down the right-hand side was that Dembele was unable to get involved in the game. One, because he rarely varied his movement. We did see Yuri stick tight to him, and what also happened here was that Munain did a very good job of dropping off deeper to sometimes ensure that it was 1v2 down that right-hand side, and Dembele never really got going. We saw Luis Suarez dropping off deeper, a bit of rust with him, but when he was trying to link play with teammates and pull the center backs out of position, he was struggling to link play, and that was another problem. Down the left-hand side, what we ended up seeing here was that DeMarcos, for the most part, and we'll get to Barcelona's better chances or better pieces of play in that first half, was when DeMarcos was dropping off deeper to ensure that Jordi Alba, who is arguably Barcelona's second most attacking threat in terms of their build-up last season, from getting on the ball and overlapping and driving into that space. Because when we look at Barcelona, we know what we're going to expect. Suarez to break into the channels or drop off. Griezmann should be drifting laterally from the left, and Dembele should be running at the opposition from the right-hand side. We weren't getting any of that. De Jong was being marked out of the game, and Barcelona struggled in that opening half and for basically the entire game to create chances and force the keeper to make quality saves. Missing Messi there. But here, this was simply down to them just not really get going, and a terrific defensive shape, discipline, and organization from Bilbao. We look to where Barcelona were really somewhat finding joy, and this is really difficult to say based off the fact that they did hit the post from a poor Unai Lopez pass that Suarez received in the box. They did force the keeper into a save, but it was a moment of brilliance from Rafinha, who we'll get to in a bit. But besides that, the only places or areas where they were looking to cause somewhat of a threat was down the left-hand side because of the movement. Because like I said here, Griezmann drifting from that flank should be pulling out Kappa, and when he pulls him out, then that should allow Jordi Alba to push forward. But they needed a third man to really get that going because they did have a good defensive shape down that right-hand side. That man was Aliana. What we ended up seeing here was him receiving the ball in midfield, and he ends up locating Kappa and DeMarcos a bit narrow. So what he ends up doing is poking that ball down the left-hand side, and why that is also key is because Kappa was narrow because Griezmann pulled them out. So Griezmann pulls them out, ball clipped over, you have Jordi Alba breaking forward. What happens now is that with DeMarco's out of the game, Kappa has to step to Alba because he is that much of a threat. And we see Griezmann make a near post run across Nunez. Pass played into him. He back heels it into Luis Suarez, but Danny Garcia gets across to ensure that that danger is cleared. That is one piece of good movement from Barcelona that possibly should have led to at least a shot on target. We look to another opportunity where we see, again, Aliana dropping off a bit deeper, getting the square pass from Sergi Roberto, slides the ball out to Jordi Alba. That pulls out DeMarcos. Griezmann pulls out to the flank. That pulls out Kappa. What ends up happening here is that we see Aliana continue his run into that space beyond markers to get the poked ball from Griezmann. That's the way to bypass a team that is so organized. However, he was forced to go back, but it just goes to show you where they were finding openings because they weren't finding anything down that flank, and that was the route to goal, was the movement of Griezmann, pushing Alba forward, getting another midfield runner if Suarez wasn't really getting involved to break down that left-hand side. Unfortunately for Barcelona, Suarez came off due to an injury. Rafinha came on. That pushed Griezmann central. Then you had Rafinha peeling off that right-hand flank. And what we ended up seeing from him was basically simple, is that he was constantly trying to drift into central positions, but not really offering much guile or penetration in the final third. And based off the fact that Bilbao was doing such a good job on that left-hand side, Nelson Semedo's attacking threat wasn't really bothering them. Basically, it was obsolete. So we look at that and we see how Barcelona was struggling. Going forward defensively, they had a few issues. Inaki Williams' ability to break into space in behind the center backs and in behind the fullbacks into the channels was pivotal here. He was involved in their best chances of the game from open play. They didn't create much, but when they did, he was there. One, a poor pass beyond De Jong, and what happens there is it falls to Inaki Williams, drives forward, fires a shot from distance that forces Ter Stegen into a big save. There was one in particular that really summed them up, because what we often saw was some of their best movement involved Munain dropping off a bit narrow to pull Semedo out of position. So what ended up happening here was he drops off, pulls Semedo out of position. The ball gets pushed out to Yuri. We see obviously down that right-hand side, Dembele is supposed to close. Yuri clips the ball around Semedo because he's pulled out narrow. And you see Inaki Williams break in behind the center, across the center backs to pick up the ball in left half space. He drives forward, but he can only force Ter Stegen into a save. But that is what they were trying to do, get Inaki Williams into that space by pulling out the fullbacks, hoping Jordi Alba possibly gets caught high, and relying on Inaki Williams' pace to break in behind Piqué and Lenglet. We saw in the second half, we saw a long ball punted into the space of Raul Garcia and De Jong. De Jong can't match him for physicality, and he ends up nodding the ball in between the center backs for Inaki Williams to run across Piqué, but then he can't even force Ter Stegen into a quality save. But that is just signs of how he was able to cause Barcelona problems. Long balls into the channels, breaking in behind, and that was pivotal to what Bilbao were doing, besides the fact that they had Raul Garcia sitting on De Jong, and they had a great defensive shape. When we look to the second half, Rakitic came on for Aliana. Like I said, Dembele ended up moving out to the left-hand side, and Rafinha was cutting in off the right, and that was possibly Barcelona's best or greatest route to goal, was when those two moved a bit more narrow, which does make a lot of sense. What we had here was Griezmann struggle to get into the game in the second half based off the fact that he was playing through the center and often looking to make sharp runs in behind, but not getting the service. He wasn't dropping off deeper to link play. He wasn't showing much of a presence when he didn't have the ball and when he was looking to get the ball, like Luis Suarez was trying to do, and he wasn't involved in Barcelona's attack, so that wasn't good for Valverde's side. But when we look to some of their better chances, one, Rafinha drifting off from the right into the left-hand side, and he's able to pick up a pass from Dembele, who splits Kappa and splits DeMarcos, and you see Rafinha running off Unai Lopez to break into that left half space to fire a shot into the side netting. Not the greatest opportunity, but again, we're seeing what they're trying to do there. And then we look to later on, and before we even get to later on, what ended up happening here was the fact that you have Bilbao making great substitutes and filling in the voids that were were looking to slightly drop off due to energy levels. You had Sanceta come on, and what happened there was that he ended up pushing Raul Garcia to the right for DeMarcos. Bernat ended up coming on for Unai Lopez, and what ended up happening here in that chance was that now you had Garcia, who was energetic and, like I said, disciplined, tracking Jordi Alba and helping out Kappa. What we end up seeing there, Dembele finally decides to move into a narrow position, and he ends up getting the pass from Jordi Alba to split those two, and what he ends up doing is driving forward and then pulling the ball back to Griezmann, who dropped off of the center backs, but his shot was blocked. But that is just a good play where we see some varied movement from Dembele because he struggled to get involved. I said Griezmann struggled to get involved. The midfield were unable to really get into the game, even though as it wore on, you had Bilbao dropping off deeper, but they were comfortable with that because Barcelona weren't causing them any issues. They tried to bring on Carlos Perez to move out into that right-hand side, but that wasn't working for them either. And the build-up to the goal that they do concede is just very poor and simple. Kappa throw in, and he plays it into Garcia, who clips it over Dembele and Alba, and Kappa continues his run, clips the ball into the box. Great finish from Aduriz, but what we end up seeing is that Semedo drops off, ball watches, doesn't close down his marker, and it's a superb finish past Ter Stegen. And when you break down the game as a whole, you have to give Bilbao full credit for the win. They had a game plan in terms of going forward through Inaki Williams without the ball, shut down De Jong, clogged out the wide areas, and neutralized Barcelona's threat. And without Messi and with Suarez going down, Valverde didn't have any options off the bench that were capable of changing the game, and that should be a worry for this Barcelona side, who are looking to compete in all competitions. But let me know what you guys think. Should Barcelona worry about this result? What does this say about Valverde, and are they still that reliant on Lionel Messi, even with Antoine Griezmann joining the club? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.